What is up? Welcome to No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. Ryan in the host seat again, but guess what? Joe Zollo is actually here tonight, so you know it's going to be a special episode, and it is. It is our annual IDP preview. We get to introduce you guys to some of our favorite ways of playing fantasy football, where we do individual defensive players. Josh Hudson knows nothing about defense, so we kick his ass out. We move me to the host seat, and Joe, who is really good with IDP, gets to be the expert on today's show, but he is not the only expert. We have the master IDP himself. Leo is with us. It's going to be a fun show. Let's get into it. Welcome to No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Ryan Weisse, and directly to my right, probably your left one. No, your right, my left, whatever.
There you go.
Joe Zollo, the normal host of this show, but today in a completely different role. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm great, and I was intimidated when I learned who was coming on the show, because we've had like top 5, top 10, and they had to go and get number 1, so I really had to make sure I was on my shit here this week.
And what Joe means by that, our guest, Leo, at Master IDP, and a fitting name. Leo was the number 1 IDP ranker with FantasyPros last year. Leo, welcome to the show. Congratulations in person. I'm pretty sure I congratulated you on Twitter when the rankings came out, but good to have you on the show, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to diving into another year of IDP here. So thanks for having me.
We couldn't have picked a better guest. The point of this show, it started off as our intro to IDP. I think for SEO purposes, Josh has now named it our IDP preview. But we like to tell people why they should be doing this. But before we get into that, Leo, just a quick introduction. Let people know where they can find your work, what websites you're doing work for. So when they leave here itching for more defensive knowledge, they know where to find it.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a co-founder of RPOfootball.com. You can find my content there. I also am an analyst over at FTN Fantasy, so you can find my rankings and some articles over there as well. Rankings over at FantasyPros as well, and we have an RPO Football YouTube channel as well, so you can find all of our rookie content is up right now. We haven't gotten into redraft, but we'll be talking a little bit about that tonight.
There you go. Yeah, as I say, it never occurs to me that there's Dynasty IDP, which I'm actually not involved in much Dynasty IDP, except for one bananas league I'm in, but we don't need to bring that up on the show. Quick news before we get into the IDP segment of the show, though I was able to find some IDP news to throw in here. The NFL schedule release was today. They announced the international games. They had already announced the opening Thursday night game, Bills and Chiefs. I know they announced all the Christmas games. I'll be honest, I didn't dig into the schedule release. I was prepping for the show. So if you didn't know it was out, it's out now. Go take a look. I think important news, especially Joe, who respects this man's game immensely. Marquez Valdez-Scantling signs with the Buffalo Bills. And
not even a little bit.
And for a show, for people that Joe just respects greatly having good days, Jared Goff signs a 4-year deal worth $212 million to extend his contract with the Lions. Someone Joe does like, Antoine Winfield, signs the largest contract by a DB ever. We're going to talk more about Winfield later in the show. And then, Joe, I had to include this because it popped up on NFL.com. Gerard Mayo says Drake May has a lot to work on. How are you feeling about your quarterback pick right now?
Shocking, an ACC quarterback who plays at a Division I basketball school perennially known for their basketball is not good at football. So that's really shocking to, I think, the entire world that Drake May is not ready to go. I like his attitude, though. He has a much better attitude than Mac Jones. So
yeah, Mac Jones did not rub you right literally from the start. Not even talking about the draft.
I heard he doesn't rub anybody right, so that's why he's
there
not
you
a
go.
good one.
Clearly didn't rub the Patriots right, or Robert Kraft, and that's why he's gone.
See ya.
All right, guys. Intro to IDP, and what I like to start with is the elevator pitch. There are folks out there who have no idea what IDP is or why they should be playing it. So, Leo, take as much time as you need or as much time as you want, and then Joe can chime in at the end. Give us an elevator pitch as to why people should be playing IDP.
Yeah, I think you should at least give IDP a try. In my opinion, it's a lot more fun. I mean, it's twice as much fun because you get to watch twice as many players, and you could, watch potentially twice as many games or have twice as many people to root for when you are sitting down to watch a game. If you're just playing offense, you may be limited to 8-10 players per week, but you could get up to even 20 players if you add in defensive players. So it just opens up a whole nother side of the game. But also there's more scoring. I mean, everybody likes scoring. That's part of why people are playing PPR and Superflex. They just want to see higher points, and you add in defensive players and you're getting even more points, and you really can separate the good teams from the bad teams. Maybe not a fluke matchup, but you also gain, I think you actually, by playing IDP, you also gain knowledge about offensive matchups. So like it makes you a better player when you go back to your offense only league, because who's the good defenses, who might be, a weak cornerback that you can take advantage of, or, where, who's letting up a lot of rushing yards. And then lastly, I think you can just start out slow, replace that team defense. If you want to start out with 1, 2, 3, go all the way to 11, there's a lot of customization where you don't have to fit into a certain pattern. You can kind of pick and choose. What we see a lot is people might start out at 4, and then year 2, they're like, okay, I want to add a couple more. And then they're like, year 3, we're adding a couple more. And, it's okay to start out that way and kind of get your feet wet, especially as you transition a league over.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. Joe, I know what your first and main point is going to be. It's, do you like points?
Do you like points?
Every year we've been doing, I think this is our 5th year hosting this episode together.
Do you like
Joe.
Points?
Do you like points? But
do you like
get
points?
into it, buddy.
But I like what Leo said is, don't even make them positional. Just put 3 IDPs, and you can
IDP
pick,
flex.
You just pick, and honestly, take 3 linebackers, and you'll be really happy with what you come up with. But that way it's not intimidating. You have, and even for example, my league does 3, but it's 1 DL, 1 linebacker, 1 DB.
I've been trying to pitch leagues to do that. Every league I'm in, I'm like, 1 of each. I think we'll have so much fun with it.
And you're telling me too, again, now casual fantasy football players and just casual players may not know all the defensive side of the ball, guys, but like Leo said, you get to learn. But for a lot of leagues where people are fans of the NFL and watch both sides of the football, you at least know 15 safeties, 15 linebackers, because they're good. So you're like, oh, okay, we'll pick him. TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, these massive names that are going to pop up later on in the show. So those are easy picks. And like Leo said, you could have, just on an awful, horrific, horrendous defense, but you have Bobby Okereke, who's a top 5 linebacker. And you can have him, and that's okay. But you never in a million years would start the Giants team defense. So it opens it up to a lot more possibilities and a lot more points.
Our buddy, the great Jorge Edwards, in the chat says, Leo, Final Fantasy IDP for life. I didn't know what shirt to wear tonight, so I'm actually rocking my Fantasy and Frame shirt.
Oh, nice. I love Jorge.
Yep. Such a good dude. We love Jorge as well. Jorge and I met in person at the very first Fantasy Football Expo, which at the time was the Midwest Fantasy Football Expo. And then he got me into his charity tournament, and I'm covered up by the banner today. But we have my championship belt that is normally above my corner that nobody can see right now.
1/14.
That Joe suggested Camryn Curl, another name that might come up on the show. So as the guys mentioned, there's a couple of different ways to play IDP. IDP Flex is much like your flex in fantasy football. You can choose a lineman, a linebacker, or a DB, a corner, or a safety to play in that spot. But there are leagues that also break it down. But when you're breaking down these different positions, Leo, there's going to be different things that you're looking for. Can you kind of explain to people, for you specifically, the number 1 ranker from FantasyPros, what you are looking for in fantasy football? Let's start with the defensive lineman.
Sure. So, one of the baseline things I look at is snaps. If you're not getting 70% of the defensive snaps at the defensive line position, I'm really not that interested, because you just lose a lot of opportunities. We see one of our favorite names, Maxx Crosby. He's close to 100% every game, which is really an exception. But the closer you are to 100% at defensive line, it makes a big difference. There's just more opportunities. And after that, I'm also looking for somebody that's getting sacks and pressures. Typically what I look for in my defensive line is somebody that can make a big play. I'm usually saving my linebackers and my defensive backs for somebody that'll rack up tackles. But defensive line, I'm looking maybe for that big play that could really make a difference, when I'm doing my weekly matchup. And then, lastly is kind of, I'll throw in somebody that, I won't want somebody completely deficient in tackle. So, there's certain players that I might ignore if they really have a low amount of tackles, because I still want a little bit of consistency built in. But typically it's those guys that are getting those sacks and pressures that I want that big play. And maybe I see a matchup I like. So that's kind of what I look for in that position.
And Joe, you said a lot of the exact same things, but you threw in the competition, and I'll just let you explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, competition, own team, and opposing line. I think maybe without Christian Wilkins, Maxx Crosby was probably gonna be most people's ones, maybe just for the reason Leo said he doesn't come off the field because he's an absolute freak. Yeah. But now you add in a Pro Bowl, like all pro level defensive tackle to take away attention from him, that just opens it up more. Whereas you have a guy like TJ Watt, again, freak. There isn't really anybody you're taking away to like make sure he's blocked over TJ Watt. Like, yes, Cam Hayward, but he's 37. And a couple guys on the opposite side, but you're not really worried about double teaming. You're double teaming Watt every time. Now you have to leave Maxx Crosby single, or you're leaving him like with a tight end chip. And there's no tight end in this league that's shipping Maxx Crosby that he's going to give a shit about. So that's what I like there. And then the opposing lines as well. And this is mostly just looking at in division because you get 6 guaranteed matchups. The Chargers have one of the worst offensive lines in football. The Chiefs have been bad on the edge in recent years, and the Broncos do not have a good offensive line. So again, this is just one iteration of who we'll talk about and why he's on the graphic. But Maxx Crosby has 6 really good matchups every single year. So don't go through like every away and opposing team. That's just, you're going to get super minute there. But those little bumps that could get you something is those in-division matchups, because that takes up over a third of your fantasy football season.
And then Joe, just roll us into linebackers.
Tackles. That's it. That's it.
I knew you were going to say tackles, but I find it interesting. You and Leo both have an answer that, I mean, you've talked about your second point a little bit, but you've never made it your second point. And Leo brought up a point that I don't think we've ever seen talked about on the show when it comes to linebackers. So Joe, talk to me about RB strength.
Yeah, you want to know why Foye Oluokun led the league in tackles for 3 straight years?
Oh, I didn't realize this was going to spoil my question for later, you bastard.
Oh, well, here it is. It's because he fucking saw Derrick Henry 35 times twice a season. So, that like, you play Baltimore, Logan Wilson might be a little higher up on people's lists. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, not going to be a guy you start every single week, but if he's on the waiver wire and your guy's hurt or you need a fill-in and he's playing Baltimore, well, he's probably going to see a lot of action with Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews even coming over the middle. So that's what I mean by running back strength, is how good is the opposing running back and how much are they running it? If you saw Atlanta last year, you were pretty happy when they ran the football 66, 67% of the time, because you knew your linebackers are going to mostly rake in the tackles. So that's what I mean by running back strength. It's very minor, but it does help push players over the edge, especially in week-to-week matchups.
Yep, guys, I'm going to let you know we see all your questions in the comments. I'm going to save those for the positional breakdowns. They're top 10s that we're going to do later, so we will get to your questions. Just going to be a little bit later in the show. Leo, green dot is the first time I've ever seen it on a show sheet. Explain.
Yeah, so I think, one of the important things to have potentially in your linebacker is a linebacker that has the green dot. And the green dot's the sticker on the back of the helmet that, indicates the helmet has a headset that can, the coaches can call on the plays. Yeah. And what's great about having the green dot is it generally ensures that the player is going to be on the field close to 100%. So when you're looking, maybe you missed on the top tier of linebackers and you're looking at that next group of guys, if this guy has the green dot, it might ensure that he's on the field a little bit more. He's not going to get pulled off, because there are teams that are running more and more single linebacker formations. And if you've got that second linebacker and he's coming off and only playing 80%, well, you just lost out on 20% of the opportunities to make a play. Maybe he's coming off the field on third down when they're going to, bring in an extra safety or something. And, it's really going to hurt your production if the guy's not on the field on third down. So, finding those guys and keeping an eye on who's winning that green dot competition. A lot of times they stay with the same guys the prior year. But if your linebacker is in a competition, I'd keep an eye on that.
Perfect. And Leo, just roll us into the DBs, and then we'll start talking about some rookies and top 10s.
Yeah. So, a DB, I'm typically looking for somebody that's going to be playing a lot in the box. And, they're not going to be the safety lined up deep. We want somebody a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. You're looking for those guys that are going to get a bunch of tackles. There's exceptions. Actually, Antoine Winfield, did play a little bit deeper, and Jesse Bates played a little bit deeper. But generally, the rule is that they're going to, there's more opportunities to make a play when they're closer to the line of scrimmage. If you can also find somebody that's, a team that runs a lot of single high formations, that means that one safety's deep and one's closer to the line of scrimmage. And that really helps because there's a lot of teams now that are moving to, split safety, too deep. And, you prefer that guys in the box or covering the slot, even as a cornerback.
And Joe, me and you have been preaching this for as long as me and you have known each other when it comes to IDP. So what do you look for in a defensive back, Joe?
You play safety or you suck in coverage. Those are my 2 points, and you're preferably suck in coverage from the slot.
Yeah.
Normally, your slot guys are gonna. You want to know why C.J. Gardner-Johnson was so good in 2022? Because he can't fucking cover, and he played in the slot. He'll come up later. Don't worry. Yeah. But he's just bad in coverage. I will say Corey Littleton against the Saints in the NFC Championship. Alvin Kamara had 11 catches. You want to know how many tackles Corey Littleton had? 11. Because you want to know how many catches he allowed? 11 to Alvin Kamara. You want to know how many points that is? 22 in my league. That's pretty good.
Well, we've talked about Darius Williams for a while, where he was awful in coverage. I think he was a top 5 corner in fantasy football last year.
Yes. The only exception, Kenny Moore. He's the only exception to the rule because he will create turnovers and he has no issue putting his nose in there for tackles, getting older. But Kenny Moore has kind of been that one exception to the rule recently. But yeah, you better suck in coverage if you're a cornerback and don't mind getting your nose dirty.
As long as they're not so bad that they're getting benched.
Yeah, getting
the only exception.
Snaps percentage.
Yeah, they need guaranteed snaps, but still suck. Exactly.
I love that Leo brought up the snaps earlier because one of the things that Sleeper does so well is if you click on a defensive player, it straight tells you snap percentages. Use that tool if you were playing IDP on Sleeper. However, do not use their ADP, especially this time of year, because it is the worst. Awful. First of all, they just make everybody 9999, and you have to go find people. I recommend if you are in an IDP draft, get into that draft room and start starring and adding them to your queue so you don't forget them, because you're not going to find them by sorting by ADP like you normally do. Sleeper, fix your ADP. I yell at you about this every year. Get it better.
To be fair, CBS Sports doesn't do a good job either. Jerome Baker was like the linebacker 3 in 2021. So again, nobody has a great system yet.
All right. Top 10's incoming, guys. Hopefully what they just told you gets you more interested in IDP. If you are, while we don't cover IDP a lot on No Punt Intended, Joe and I are always available to answer questions. We never let a question go unanswered throughout our shows. So you guys should subscribe to us on YouTube right now. We are like 15 subscribers away from hitting 1,000. You could be the person that helps gets us there. It's completely free. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We just had the NFL draft, Leo. Give us 1 or 2 rookies who have the best chance to make a year 1 impact. And should people temper their expectations for rookie IDP in the first place?
Yeah. So to begin with, I always, especially in a redraft format, I generally try to avoid rookies, especially we just talked about ADP. They're going to be boosted up because a lot of people, are doing dynasty. So they're impacted, those dynasty drafts are impacting ADP. So you can't necessarily trust that. So I generally avoid rookies because they're going to get overdrafted. Somebody's going to get hyped up, but we haven't even seen, the camp competitions and stuff. So I generally try to avoid rookies in dynasty, but there is one rookie linebacker that I'm interested to see if he can take that job. And that's Junior Colson for the Chargers. He was picked in the 3rd round. He was the 2nd linebacker off the board behind Edgerrin Cooper. He's reunited with his Michigan coaches, Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter. So he's already familiar with that defense. they have plans for him down the road to get the green dot. I mean, Derwin James has it right now, but they have plans for him to take over that defense. And so, he's just got Denzel Perryman and Deion Henley hanging around. And so, Perryman's, I don't know how much he's got left in the tank, but
missed a lot of games last year.
Yeah, he's he's kind of been up and down. I mean, he can make some plays. Maybe he helps kind of get them through a little bit, but I don't think it's too long before Junior Colson takes over.
Colson was the player they took when everyone swore they were going to take Blake Corum. I think that was the pick because the announcer even was like, Jim Harbaugh gets one of his guys, and everyone's like, oh, it's Corum. And no, it was not Corum at all. So that was a funny moment during the draft that I remember. And Joe, again, we do so many shows together. I knew who you were going to have on the list, but break it down for him.
Byron Murphy, he was the first guy off the board. A lot of opportunity in Seattle. He's going to see a lot of snaps. Nobody's going to have any competition for him. And then the man who will replace Aaron Donald. He's not Aaron Donald, but let me tell you, he's an athlete. Braden Fisk out of Florida State. Holy wow, was this guy something at the combine. He, early second-round pick, good draft capital. Again, you want to talk about vacated snaps. There's a lot of snaps out there for him to take with Aaron Donald not being there. I think he's going to fill in for that role. Seems like they can move him across the line a little bit. And again, same division as Byron Murphy, so there's going to be a lot of action with San Francisco. There's a lot of high-powered offenses in that division. So I like Fisk a lot. I'm with Leo. I wouldn't really buy into anybody this year unless you're in a deeper league and you want to take one of these guys as a backup. I think that's fine, but I wouldn't buy into them this year.
We've seen so many IDP rookies bite us in the ass. Isaiah Simmons comes to mind. And so, take that advice from these guys. Oh, 100%. But that seems to happen a lot with these rookies, unfortunately. It takes a year or two to figure out how to use them. So just keep that in mind, guys. It doesn't matter how high a guy was drafted. You should probably tread lightly in that first year. And, guys, it's going to be time to talk top 10s. So I had these guys start with defensive line. We're just going to kind of go in order. I'm going to break down their top 10, point out the differences, and then I have some questions created, and I'll let them talk about it. So Joe was in the show sheet first, so you're going to hear Joe's first. Defensive line, Maxx Crosby, Aiden Hutchinson, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, Josh Allen, and Jacksonville are the top 5. TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson, Brian Burns, Khalil Mack, and Will Anderson round out his 10. Leo agrees. Maxx Crosby, there's a reason he's the thumbnail. TJ Watt is 2. Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, and Danielle Hunter at 5. Nick Bosa at 6. Josh Allen, Aiden Hutchinson, Khalil Mack, and Brian Burns round out the top 10. These guys only had 2 differences. Joe included Trey Hendrickson and Will Anderson, whereas Leo included Danielle Hunter and Nick Bosa. Guys, I want to get us started with the consensus. Number 1, Maxx Crosby. He's the thumbnail. He's Joe's little under title on his name right now. Leo, should Maxx Crosby be the first IDP drafted?
I'm going to say yes and no. I mean, it's really going to come down, in my opinion, it's really going to come down to your league scoring. I mean, I hate to say there's a lot of customization.
I am so glad you said that because I meant to start this section with that. Guys, I know Joe plays in some wonky scoring leagues, and a lot of his advice comes from that type of scoring. It's not even wonky scoring. He just plays in a lot different scoring, and Leo has already brought it up. A lot of different IDP scoring. There is no standard in our industry. Find out your scoring. It's going to play a big part into it. And now, Leo, go ahead and talk about why it's going to play a big part. Thank you.
So what we see in a lot of formats, like ESPN, Yahoo, that you see it pretty tackle heavy. So like in those leagues, it may make more sense to take a linebacker, that's going to get you those guaranteed points. But there's leagues that a little bit more sack heavy. And having somebody like Maxx Crosby could be a little bit more beneficial. With the disparity between the top positions here. So it's really going to kind of depend. I mean, I typically don't get a chance to take those top defensive guys because I'm still working on offense. I'm rounding that out. So I typically miss out on a lot of these guys, but I would love to have Maxx Crosby on my team. And, it'd be nice if somebody doesn't beat me to him. But, I think you can make a solid argument for him to be, you can just set him in your lineup and just forget it and not have to worry about it the whole season. So, I think you can't really go wrong with Maxx Crosby as your first defensive player.
And Joe, I'll let you continue talking about Crosby, but I'm also going to throw Jorge's question up here on the screen. What about Malcolm Koonce out there in Vegas? Is he a nice little A to Crosby's B? Other way around, B to Crosby's A.
I think it's great that he came there to take attention away from Maxx Crosby. I think he should know his role and know his job, and that is sit back, take any pressure away from Crosby, and let him rake in 35 sacks this year. And
I was gonna say,
fine.
It seemed like he really took a big step up last year, both in snaps played and certainly in sacks. Did not play a lot as a rookie, had 2 sacks, played all 17 games in his second year, but did not record a single sack, but then jumps up to 8 sacks in 2023.
Because he's a dog.
Yeah, I really like him. My buddy Pedro, he put an article, just a one-player profile on Malcolm Koonce as kind of his breakout candidate. Last year, his breakout candidate was Carl Granderson, and he finished strong the year before, and then jumped into that full role. What we saw with Malcolm Koonce is that they drafted that rookie, and he just really didn't do anything, and as the season went on, Malcolm Koonce took over that position opposite Crosby and ran with it. And they're not sure what they're going to do with Tyree Wilson as the rookie. They drafted him super high, and he just didn't really pan out that well. So they're trying to figure out, between Wilson and Christian Wilkins they brought over, where's Tyree Wilson going to fit in? But Malcolm Koonce did finish pretty strong this past year, and as long as he's keeping that spot, across from Crosby, and he can keep those snaps up, I think he's somebody that's worth picking as a sleeper that's going to generally be not drafted and somebody you can just kind of pick up late.
I like that. And then Joe, I do want to come back and give you a chance to answer. Crosby, number 1 IDP selected?
No, it's Foye Oluokun.
Okay.
To me, that's not close. Unless your league is so heavily incentivized on sacks and not super incentivized on tackles, if you get 1 point for a tackle and 6 for a sack, maybe go Crosby. But if you're looking at 1.5 for a tackle, or again in my leagues, in one of them it's 2 for a tackle, 3 for sacks. Foye Oluokun outscores Crosby by 200 points. It's not even close. But in more disparaged leagues, I could see it, but no. Foye Oluokun is going to be a top 10 fantasy scorer, including offense. So you're not gonna, but you could argue that man in the first round. You're not gonna take him in the 4th, but that's there's a legitimate chance that, and even with sack heavy leagues, Crosby's gonna be a top 15 fantasy scorer this year. He could legitimately score more points than Tyreek Hill.
Wow, good lord, yeah, if it's a super sack heavy league.
Foye Oluokun scored more points than Patrick Mahomes last year.
There you go.
Where were you drafting Mahomes?
Again, it depends on your league, but yes, I agree wholeheartedly.
On FantasyPros scoring.
Okay.
What they have, Foye Oluokun had more. It's insane. I'm telling you, if you do
Lots
like
of
points,
tackles.
Do you like points? Play
IDP. Leo, you guys disagree on which Houston defensive end is going to make the biggest impact. Why do you think it's going to be the new guy, Danielle Hunter?
I mean, I'm kind of going off of just Danielle Hunter's production in the past 5 or 6 years. He's been, I think this is his 5th season with over 10 sacks. This past year he had 16 and a half, whereas Will Anderson had 7. I mean, it was in his rookie season, so you're expecting that second year jump. I mean, typically these edge rushers, they take a year to develop, and you don't really start seeing the gains till partway through the season, and you're really looking for that next jump in the second season. But I think he's still developing, so I'm going kind of with the guarantee of what that Hunter's kind of been doing it for a long time, and he's had his snaps up there close to 100% with Minnesota. Will that translate in Houston with D'Amico Ryans? Not sure, but he's shown that he can play 100% snaps, and Anderson's still kind of learning a little bit of the game. So that's really why I give him the edge there.
Yeah, and speaking of which, Joe, what do you expect we're going to see from Will Anderson in year 2?
That less attention is going to be on him because they're going to put it on Danielle Hunter. And that's honestly that's why he's 10 for me. I love Danielle Hunter. For 3 straight seasons from 2017 to 2019, he was the defensive lineman 1 in my league. Unstoppable. The man was insane. He's 30. He'll be 30. He'll turn 30 during the season. So not the end-all be-all for defensive ends by any means. But He's older. Will Anderson's younger. He's been in that. Again, I don't think it's super hard to learn the defense as a defensive end. You're either going forward or backwards, and there's no in between. But at least some of the signals and calls and things like that, Will Anderson's comfortable in there. So I think the presence, because Hunter's so good, they're going to pay more attention to him, which is going to open up lanes for Will Anderson and more one-on-one for him to get to the quarterback. So that's what I see.
And Joe, I want you to. You mentioned guys getting a little older. For the 7th consecutive year, explain to everyone why you just love Trey Hendrickson.
Because this man should have been in the fucking Defensive Player of the Year conversation, and everyone decided, no, double middle fingers to you, you irrelevant Cincinnati Bengal. Trey Hendrickson, I said last year, he was going into a contract year. He needed to perform.
Yeah.
And you want to know what they did? They gave him a 3-year with a 1-year option. So after this year, he could just be let go. So you know what he's in again? A contract year.
Oh, good point.
He's in a contract year again. Because the money, the out is a lot lower on the dead cap than it is on the cap hit. So his out is a lot better for the team to move on. And at that point, you got to think they brought in Myles Murphy. They'll have Sam Hubbard opposite Myles Murphy. So at some point, you gotta give your first-round pick from last year a chance. So I think they let go of Hendrickson next year, and he'll be fighting for his last contract. So I also think he is one of the most skilled defensive ends and pass rushers that nobody talks about, because he's not brute force. He's not. He doesn't look like Maxx Crosby. He's not threatening and speedy like Micah Parsons. He's not an absolute animal and freak like Josh Allen. He's an average white dude that if you saw him on the street, you'd think, oh, that guy owns a restaurant or like is in management of some sort. No, he sacks quarterbacks on Sundays like an absolute madman. I love Trey Hendrickson. He gets completely overlooked, and I can guarantee you can find top 10 production so late in your draft. Nobody is taking him.
So Leo, he mentioned overlooked. Hendrickson was the number 6 defensive end in just the regular scoring that I'm using from fantasy data. You do not have him in your top 10. Is this a knock on Trey Hendrickson or just not enough room to get him in there?
I still like Hendrickson. I am a Browns fan, but I do like Hendrickson. I like his game, but there's some reasons why I have him kind of a little bit outside of that range, top 10 range. His tackles are really low.
So low. I will agree with you on that. They're very low.
And so, like we've talked about it, if you're in a scoring system that really rewards those tackles, like let's say an IDP 1, 2, 3, which is giving 2 points per tackle, having somebody like Hendrickson could really damper you if he could really hurt you when he doesn't get that sack that week. I mean, he had a big string of sacks this past year, but the last 3 years he's gone 14 sacks, 8 and 17. So he did go up and down a little bit. So you don't always know if those pressures are going to turn into sacks, from season to season. Like there's no guarantee that he's going to be able to repeat that performance. So I do expect a little bit of regression from him. I'm not knocking his game. It's just when you get that high in number of sacks, it's very likely that it's going to come down the following year.
I will say, I agree. I have blind faith in that man.
Yeah, you do.
So every year, I have blind faith in that man. But everything Leo is saying is 100% accurate, and you're not taking him as the 7th defensive end. So don't worry. Honestly, he's probably going to be your backup. Hell, if it's deep enough, you get him as your 3rd string. But he's going to be there, and he's someone you want. And from what I know and everything I saw, I feel like I'm the highest on Trey Hendrickson of anyone I've ever talked to in fantasy football. So just understand that for those listening, if you've never listened. I love Trey Hendrickson.
You bring him up every year and you get your victory lap at the next year.
The no-glove warrior.
Exactly. Leo, we need to get off of defensive ends, but I did want to bring up this last question because it's something that I actually made the mistake of last year. Nick Bosa, who you have as your, sorry, I scrolled down, your number 6. Yeah, Joe doesn't have him ranked. And Joe, I know you want to shit on Nick Bosa, but I do not have time for that. What I do want to bring up, Leo, is Bosa started incredibly slow last year. I have a league where we are 1 IDP. I drafted him. I cut him before he took off. He took off in week 6. do managers in fantasy need to exercise a lot of patience with really good defensive ends who are seeing double and triple coverage every week?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you end up drafting him and, like say he's going off the board at DN 6 or D line 6, somewhere in that range, like if he's your number one D lineman, like you just have to start your stud and hope that he puts up points that week. So like, you could play matchups, but it's just not worth it. Like you drafted him early because you like him and you're gonna play him. I mean, Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, Bosa, they lead, they have a lot of double teams, but they're so good that they can overcome some of that. But you just have to be patient and start your studs, especially when you get to the playoffs. Don't mess around. You drafted him, he's going to be, he's going to hopefully put up a good week for you. I mean, I think with Bosa, it should be noted that like he was holding out last year, and his holdout didn't end up until like 4 days before the start of the season. So maybe a little bit of that start was because of his holdout, but he did end up leading the league in pressures according to PFF. So like he, still working pretty hard out there. And we saw a drop. He had 18 sacks the year before. So like it's like like I just mentioned, it's hard to repeat that. From his 18 sacks from 2022. So maybe he'll come. He'll bounce back and get a few more this year.
Joe, you're just biting your tongue on this one. We're moving on to linebacker.
That's fine. He got his bag and then he sucked. It's fine.
There's Joe's take. Got his bag and then sucked. Guys, let's talk linebackers. Leo, I'm going to read yours off first. So Foye Oluokun at 1. Bobby, is it Okereke or Okereke? I feel like we fight about this every time.
Yes, all of the above.
Okereke.
Okay. So Foye Oluokun,
the first 3 years of his career.
Bobby Okereke, Roquan Smith, Ernest Jones, Zaire Franklin at 5, Fred Warner, TJ Edwards, Levante David, Bobby Wagner, and Nick Bolton round out your top 10. A lot of consensus here. Foye Oluokun is the consensus number 1 linebacker from Joe. Zaire Franklin, Roquan Smith, TJ Edwards, Bobby Wagner round out the top 5. Fred Warner, Ernest Jones, Eric Kendricks, Quay Walker, Alex Singleton round out your top 10. Singleton's a Joe guy. Only 3 differences here.
I was right on him last year.
Yep. Joe has Kendricks, Quay Walker, and Singleton. Leo has Okereke, Levante David, and Nick Bolton. So I wanted to start off at the top there. And Joe, you've kind of already touched on this. Why is Foye so good at just seemingly leading the league in tackles every single season? And do you have concerns for Foye in sack heavy scoring, both of which you kind of touched on when you were talking Maxx Crosby?
Zero concern, and he's never not on the field.
And you also brought up the running backs he's facing. So.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, obviously Derrick Henry is no longer in the division. But even Houston last year, they had to support CJ Stroud on the ground a little bit, and I'm blank. They got Joe Mixon. So again,
may not be much change.
Yeah. Let's say an upgrade from Devin Singletary, to say the very least. So he still sees a couple teams that'll run the ball pretty heavily, and not to mention Anthony Richardson is the quarterback for the Colts, who is a run-first quarterback. So
a lot of running in that division.
There's a lot of running, but he's also fantastic in coverage. So that's why he doesn't come off the field, because he's so good in coverage, both man and zone. And he had multiple interceptions last year. I remember one he returned for a touchdown because that week he put up like 45 points for me.
Yeah, I remember that too.
He's all over the field. His teammates love him. This guy was not supposed to be anything special. He was
6th-round pick, right?
It's just an average dude. I remember in Madden 18 or 19, something like that. Whenever his rookie season was, he was rated 70 or something like that. Got him on my franchise team. Madden must have known before everybody because he was fucking insane in that game. And that's when I fell in love with him. Mostly because his name is Foye Assad, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But then he turns out, he's never not on the field. He's just always on the field and always in the right spot. He's so good.
I think it's a good point. Leo, anything to add on Foye?
No, it's when a guy's gotten led the league in IDP score in the last 3 years, it's hard to really pick anybody else.
So good.
Yeah. Now, I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, you have Okereke at 2, Leo, whereas Joe does not have him ranked at all. Why is Joe wrong, Leo? What is he missing here?
Well, I didn't really see much, he finished linebacker 2 this past year with 149 tackles. I think he improved his game a little bit, this past year or two. Like, I think he played a little bit better. I know he had some missed tackles when we were, a couple of my guys, we do, IDP prop betting, and he missed a couple of tackles and lost us a bet. But he did play better this past year. And I really don't see any change in their defense this year. I mean, they lost, their defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, but they didn't bring in any competition for him. So he's going to, have that, that leading linebacker role. Micah McFadden, Isaiah Simmons aren't really great tacklers. So, like, he doesn't have a guy next to him. Like, even Oluokun has Devin Lloyd next to him who can make tackles. But, like, I don't see any competition in there. The Giants are still going to be on defense a bunch. So, like, I think he's set up pretty well to repeat a little bit of what he did this past year.
I imagine the loss of Leonard Williams actually makes him more valuable because now you don't have a guy up front who's stopping the play from ever getting to him. So, I mean, we have that in the middle.
Sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing. Sometimes you do want those guys to eat up some space.
Because he's going to take the double team and allow
very good point.
In the hole. So it's a give and take.
Yeah.
And Joe, what's your problem with him?
I wouldn't say it's as much a problem. He's top 15, but Leo said he finished 2. He had double the amount of pass deflections he's ever had in his career, double the amount of forced fumbles, almost triple the amount of sacks, and 2 interceptions for 62 return yards. So that's a lot of points right there. Whereas the year previous, no sacks, only 2 forced fumbles, no interceptions, and no fumble return yards or fumble recovery yards. So he got propped up, I think, because of some big plays. And we say all the time, you can't bet on big plays, especially on the defensive side of the football. So that's where I think that hurts. He's still fantastic, and I don't think, wherever you're going to draft him, I think he's going to be correct where you drafted him, if not a little better, because I don't think anybody's going to see Okereke and think, oh, top dog linebacker in the NFL. That's just not a brand name right now with him. Maybe after this year, if he performs well again. So I think we're going to draft him is fine, but I see him more in that 13, 14, just because I think if you take away a couple of those big plays, he drops down significantly. So that's my only thing. He's consistent across the board as a linebacker. So
we'll see the big plays happen again. With the retirement of the great Aaron Donald, I think the new favorite elder statesman of fantasy IDP is Bobby Wagner, who may have been the favorite to begin with. Back home in Seattle has another great year. You both have him in your top 10. Joe, is there any worry that Father Time catches up with Bobby Wagner?
It's Bobby Wagner. What do you
mean? Joe's not worried about anything, very clearly.
Every member of the Legion of Boom is dead and gone. R.I.P. Not dead.
One.
Yeah, not dead, just not in the NFL. You want to know why the one's still here? Because he's one of the best linebackers to ever play the game. And he's never leaving the field. That Washington defense is not good, especially at the second level. So he is not leaving the field. I love Bobby Wagner. You want to talk about a team that runs a lot? Philly. You want to talk about a team that sucks? The Giants. You want to talk about a team that's incompetent? The Cowboys. He sees all of them.
You would know another team that sucks? Washington. So he's going to be on defense.
So he knows. Yeah, again, there's nothing this man can't do.
Yeah.
If he was the age of Foye Oluokun, they'd be 1-2 for the next 10 years. Wouldn't even be close.
They may still be. The man does not seem to be losing his
step. Yeah, no, he's fine. He's chilling.
I made the mistake of asking Joe all the possibly pessimistic questions, and he's apparently super optimistic with all these guys. Do you have any concerns about the fact that he will be 34 years old when the season kicks off?
Not from a redraft perspective. I mean, I'm not taking him in Dynasty, but I love Bobby Wagner. I mean, if you go back to his stats, I mean, I wrote this last year in an article, but he had 10 seasons of finishing the top 10 or something. He just repeatedly gives you a top 10 performance every year. So just keep riding that. He's got Washington. I mean, they let we saw Barton and Hudson, Kaliki Hudson get a lot of points there. So I don't see any issue. I mean, I know they have Frankie Louvu next to him, but I think he'll continue to get his tackles.
He had a career high in combined tackles at 33. Had 183 tackles. Yeah. And just to go really far back, for those that are older listening, London Fletcher at age 36 had 166 tackles for the Washington Redskins.
I would say for Washington.
For Washington. London Fletcher was a dog in Washington, and he started his career there at 32.
Yeah.
Insane. Yes. He will be the London Fletcher of this Washington Commanders generation.
Ooh, that's high praise right there. I like it.
Well, he's better than London Fletcher, so it's fine. But
and then Leo, you chose Nick Bolton to round out your top 10. He did miss 9 games last year, but even when he was playing, he was not quite playing to his 2022 level where he looked really, really good. Why do you see a bounce back in 2024?
I mean, yeah, see, he did drop down a lot. I mean, he was linebacker 3 in 2022, and then he had a big drop this past year, and he battled injuries. He missed 8 games. He started out with an ankle, and then he picked up a wrist that cost him 5 games. But if you actually look at his playoffs, in those 5 games, he put up really 13, 10, 13, 4, 13. So he had 4 out of the 5 games over 10 tackles, but during the regular season, he only had 1 out of 8 over 10. So he still got it, I think. I think he was battling some injuries. I know he was super efficient from a tackle rate perspective in 2022, and I know that was probably hard to repeat, but I still think he's a great player, and I think he'll bounce back once he's fully healthy. But I want to mention London Fletcher. I love London Fletcher too. He was he came from Cleveland. Yeah. He went to Division III at John Carroll here in Cleveland. So I'm a big London Fletcher.
He's like 5'8", right?
He's pretty small. Yes,
stocky as hell.
Yeah.
I also like to bring up, I got ridiculed for not having Nick Bolton in my top 10 last year on last year's show. So
you predicted injury. You're the
fuck
one.
You, Sicoli. Fuck you, Sicoli. Even in points per game, he wasn't good.
No, he definitely, when I was looking up the questions for tonight, he definitely took a step back. But I'm so glad you brought up the playoffs, because I feel like that's something people forget, is those 4 games, 3 games, 4 games still count, well. And people should pay attention to those things. And before we get out of here, Michael brings up TJ Edwards and calls him the most underrated. You guys both have him top 7, so clearly he's not underrated for you guys. Leo, I mean, I guess if there are people out there who don't know TJ Edwards, he came over to Chicago 2 years ago? Last year. Okay, I was going to say, I know it was
with recent. Tremaine Edmonds, yeah.
With Tremaine Edmonds, when they were rebuilding the defense that they tore apart when they got rid of Roquan Smith. Just give the people an intro to TJ Edwards real quick, Leo.
I mean, it really comes down. He finds the ball. He's got a great tackle rate. He's always putting up points. He really knows. He always put, like we talked about Oluokun, putting himself in the right position. Like he just comes out and he's going to be in the right spot and make the play. And really you can count on him. I was wondering how they were going to shake out between Edmonds and Edwards this past year. I mean, kind of their roles of how they were going to divvy up their playing. But, I think Edwards proved that he's the top guy there from a fantasy perspective. And you can just plug him in your lineup.
I put the eggs in the basket of Tremaine Edmonds, and I was wrong. It's TJ Edwards. So yeah, I thought Edmonds was going to be the top dog there, and very clearly he's not, because he's bad. So TJ Edwards.
Hopefully we can see a bounce back from him. All right, guys, we're gonna round out the show with the DBs. Joe's top 10 consists of Kyle Hamilton at 1, Derwin James at 2, the newly paid Antoine Winfield at 3, Budda Baker at 4, Brian Branch at 5, Cam Curl, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Jesse Bates, Xavier McKinney, and Cam Bynum round out his top 10. Leo has a lot of the same names. Antoine Winfield is his number 1. Kyle Hamilton, Derwin James, Jesse Bates are 2, 3, and 4, with Cam Bynum rounding out the top 5. Then you have Jaquan Brisker, Brian Branch, Josh Metellus, Kyle Duggar, and Xavier McKinney from your 6 to 10 spots. Another position where there's just 3 differences. Joe has Budda Baker, Cam Curl, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Leo has Jaquan Brisker, Josh Metellus, and Kyle Duggar. Leo, I want to start with the man who just became the highest paid DB in NFL history. Tell everybody why Antoine Winfield deserves that cash.
I mean, he just came off of a massive season. He led defensive players in forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, even sacks. He led DBs in. He had 122 tackles, and I mean he had quite a bit coming from a deeper position. He had 12 defended, passes defended, 3 interceptions. So he just put up numbers across the board from a fantasy perspective. But a lot of those numbers are good from just a plain football perspective. He's got a nose for the ball. He's getting interceptions, he's knocking that ball out, and that's a huge difference when you can get a turnover in the NFL. Especially with high-powered offenses that we see these days. So somebody that's taken away the ball. I mean, typically these big contract reserves for the shutdown corners, but we did see several safeties get from the 2020 class get paid this year. With Xavier McKinney going over to the Packers. Kyle Duggar just got a contract extension, so they're willing to pay these safeties a little bit more than they have in the past. It's maybe not where I would put my money, but when you have somebody like Winfield and you're the Bucks, you want to keep that guy in your team.
And Joe, you're also high on Winfield, and I know you've been singing his praises. Honestly, since he got into the league, you were one of the first people I know who were like, I mean, obviously he was a high draft pick, but you were all about him. But speaking of a high draft pick, I remember one of the stories of the 2022 draft was how do great players just keep falling to the Ravens? And that was Kyle Hamilton, who you have at your one ahead of Antoine Winfield. Why is he better for you?
We talk about guys who play up more. Kyle Hamilton plays up more. He is in the mix of shit with everything happening in that defense. And it took him a second to come on, obviously as a rookie, but he's green light, full go. There's no all gas, no brakes with him this year. And I think he's gonna take a giant leap. And that's not to say I don't love Antoine Winfield whatsoever.
I said
or Derwin
there's no
James.
doubting your love of Winfield.
Yeah, or Derwin James, my dog. But I think you get Kyle Hamilton at a good deal, in all honesty, in some of these leagues. You might get Kyle Hamilton for lower than guys like Minka, Antoine Winfield, Derwin James.
Even though he had a really good last year, the people who got burned by him rookie year because you shouldn't be drafting these guys rookie year probably are still holding that against him and not ready to move back on him. So that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
Leo, Joe's a big Budda Baker guy, has been forever. Will tell anybody who will listen he's the best player on the Arizona team, not just the defense, the whole Arizona team.
He is.
You don't even have Budda in your top 10. Is Joe stuck in the past? I was looking back. Budda has not been top 10 since 2020. And obviously there's been a lot going on with Budda and the Cardinals since then. Is Joe stuck in the past with Budda?
I think so. I mean, I think I drafted Budda one year when he was a rookie. So I was a big fan of seeing Budda come on, but I think he's kind of, trending down lately. What sticks out to me, why he's not in my top 10, I'm sure he wasn't in my top 10 last year. He was in there. So what caught me is that he was playing more deep safety, in the season, whereas Jalen Thompson was playing more in the box or in the slot. So I think that impacted his scoring. I think he finished 42nd in DB scoring average. Which, scoring average does make a difference. Some people only look at the end of the season, but, I think it is important to kind of look at the average of what these guys are doing. They had a new head coach in this past year in 2023. So maybe that played into it a little bit with their defense of why he didn't score. I mean, he's 28 years old. Maybe that's impacting a little bit. I still like the player, but he did trend down this past year, and it's hard for me to put him in the top 10.
Joe, I have to let you sing his praises.
So why did I put Trey Hendrickson in my top 10 last year, Ryan? What was he in?
What was he in?
He was in a contract year.
Oh, I'm like, what? The question make the Cincinnati defense? I don't know.
Want to know? You want to know the last time Budda Baker was in a contract year?
2020.
He set a career high in combined solo and assisted tackles.
I know you chase the contract years the way I chase coaching tendencies.
He has year 2 in this defense now. He also missed 5 games last year. He's been injured a couple times the last couple of years, and that seems to be a common theme in Arizona. Good players getting injured there. So hopefully that's a turnaround for this franchise. But he saw his best season in his rookie contract year. He's going for probably his last big contract.
Last deal.
This is his last big deal. And Budda is good, and I agree with Leo. Playing back does not help him.
Yeah.
But Jonathan Gannon understands how good of a player he is. He might scoot him up to the line of scrimmage a little bit, a couple times in the season, maybe. But thing that held him back too last year, again, injuries. He didn't have a turnover as well. But even in that big year where he set all the records, he didn't have a turnover either. So
now, Joe, I don't know. I know you don't make a top 10 list without room for Budda Baker and Cam Curl, but how in the world does a Cleveland Browns fan have a Patriots safety in his top 10 that you do not have in your top 10, Joe? What is going on with Kyle Duggar?
Didn't Kyle Duggar's contract extension come from, this is the second time in NFL history this contract extension's ever been made because New England Patriots don't like paying their players?
Something like that.
Isn't that what happened? So I love Kyle Duggar as a football player.
I know you do, so I was shocked.
I love Kyle Duggar as a football player. There were a lot of times he was not in the right spot last year. There were a lot of times he got toasted last year. And I'm starting to think maybe he's not that good. Maybe he is a Division II safety from Lenoir-Rhyne. I'm starting to feel that way just a little bit. I do like Duggar, and I do think in certain matchups he is a good fill-in player. I don't like his consistency over an entire season. Keep in mind, he's learning a new defense. I'm sure Mayo is keeping a lot of the same principles that Belichick had there. I don't think it's reinventing the wheel. But still a new defense. There was something last year with Duggar I didn't like, and last year was like, oh, I love Kyle Duggar, he's great. And every time I watch a game, I'm like, why is he there? Why is he not here? He's out of position. He's missing assignments. So again, last year was a shit show as a whole for the Patriots. But we'll just dial it back. There's better players than Kyle Duggar. You want to talk about a guy who's just not great at anything, he's just really good? That's Kyle Duggar. There's no flash to his game. It is, I'm going to hit you in the mouth, maybe, potentially force a fumble. That's what Kyle Duggar's going to do for you. That's what he's going to do. He's just,
I mean, in 2022, he had 3 touchdowns. I mean, I think that impacted his scoring. I was hoping to see a little bit of that carry over to this past year, and that didn't happen.
Zeros. Yeah, no, God, it was bad. It was definitely bad. No, I mean, I remember in 2022, he had turned over the Lions, I think, twice in one game, and he returned one of them for a touchdown. He was all over the place. Yeah. And I think this past season caught up to him that his out of position in playmaking in 2022 shined bright because there were other spotlights on that defense that could help out. Whereas last year, there was nobody on that defense that could really help him out. So him trying to make plays, I don't think was great. And I think that's going to carry over into this year.
Leo, last question before I get you out here. I'll mention your sleepers for you and your bust, but I want to get you out here at 8 o'clock. So I want to talk about the Minnesota defensive backs. You got Bynum and Metellus both in your top 10. They were both top 5 last year. Do you see them being able to repeat that in 2024? And one of the things that really struck me about this team in general is Harrison Smith is still there, and they've kind of been planning for him not to be there for a while. And they also drafted that Lewis Sign very high a few years ago, and he's kind of getting pushed to the back for these two guys. So do you see these two guys as being the forefront of this secondary again in 2024?
Well, yeah, I mean, as you know, from a production standpoint, I do see kind of a repeat. I mean, Harrison Smith doesn't have much left in the tank. So they do run, they run 3 safety formations close to 100%. So both of these guys are going to see the field. I mean, I was investing heavily in Harrison Smith this past year, and that didn't pan out for me. I should have got one of these two guys. It is, these guys were DB3 and DB4, and that's really hard to repeat from a fantasy perspective at the DB position. But I love that defense with Brian Flores. They put Metellus in 116 pass rush snaps. They're putting him close to the line of scrimmage. He had the most, from PFF, they say defensive line snaps, 206. So they're putting him up there close to where he can make those tackles week in and week out. So with having 3 defensive line, 3 safeties, they use him a little bit as linebacker. They use him a little bit at safety, a little bit at corner. They're really kind of preaching versatility those defensive backs. And Bynum, he led all safeties with 137 tackles. He plays deeper than I typically like, so I wasn't investing in him or like ranking him very high during the season, but he just kept putting up numbers every week. And, I'm kind of turning the page and kind of going in for buying him this year. Hopefully that doesn't bite me in the ass. But, I like those guys with Brian Flores. He brings pressure from all over the place. So I'm not afraid to repeat at that position, but it's really hard to, for them to get back in the top 10 or any of these guys.
Leo, you've been a great guest. We knew you were going to be a great guest. I think it's safe to say, and hopefully Jorge is not offended and would agree, maybe our best IDP show ever. You and Joe played well off of each other. Great rankings. Please, I want to get you out of here as quickly as possible. Remind everybody where they can find your work, what you got going on for this season.
Sure. Yep. You can find me over at rpofootball.com. We've got all the rookie rankings you need. We got combined offense and defense, rookie rankings. We'll be turning the page here to redraft soon, but like we're really focused on dynasty right now. I've been putting out a few articles over at FTN Fantasy, so check me out over at those two sites. And thanks for having me on, guys.
No, thank you. You've been amazing, my friend. Have a wonderful night. Go take care of those kids. Go Browns.
All right, thanks, guys.
See you. Good night, buddy. Yeah. Joe, we're not quite done yet.
Just real quickly on the two safeties.
Yeah.
Brian Flores is going to get these guys paid because they both are fucking terrible. Josh Metellus had 116 tackles last year. Total before that, he had under 60. And then Camryn Bynum, who is a joke, might I add to you. Remember that guy who allowed the touchdown to the Lions give them the first win in 2021?
Oh, yeah.
That was Camryn Bynum. Camryn Bynum is a joke. They moved him to safety. They're like, oh, he's really bad as a cover corner. We should move him. Totally at 81 tackles in 2022. Basically almost 1.5 times that. 137 combined tackles. When I tell you Brian Flores was working with literal garbage last year, he was working with garbage. And this man made he turned an ugly trash can into a Febreze trash bag. Like it smelled good, but we all knew it was still shit. Okay? We all knew it was still shit. That's Camryn Bynum and Josh Metellus. That's why Leo put in for Harrison Smith like a smart guy, because nobody was buying in on these guys. Continue.
But keep in mind, as Joe pointed out earlier, being bad for football can be great for fantasy, as we are seeing.
They're bad at football.
Yep. And we're going to end the show as we always do with sleepers and bust. I'll read off Leo's for you. I wish he was here to give you the analysis. I'm not going to give you the analysis. And I actually feel really dumb for letting this show run long because I wanted to ask him about Dax Hill as his bust, but you saw Cincinnati invest a lot of money in outside safeties coming in. And it seems like Dax Hill is getting pushed further down the depth chart. He also has Tyrell Dodson, the linebacker out of Seattle, and KJ Britt, the linebacker is Tampa Bay, as his sleepers. So for his bust, Dax Hill; for his sleeper, Tyrell Dodson and KJ Britt. Joe, you got some familiar names for us that people may not be paying a lot of attention to in fantasy football.
D lineman Kenny Clark, love him. Contract year. I love Kenny Clark. Again, playing for his last contract. He's a defensive tackle you don't really hear too much about. It's mostly for defensive tackle slots. If you're playing defensive line in total, the defensive ends and edge rushers are just better. But for D tackle specific, he's good. And as a depth guy. Devin Lloyd, people are going to be like, why would I get the second guy next to the best tackler in the NFL?
They're going to worry about the best tackler in the NFL.
Yeah, because there's still about 130, 150 that Foye can't get to, and those are going to Devin Lloyd. So he's going to be good. Jeremy Chin, please, Washington, put him in the Cameron Curl role.
Oh, my goodness.
Because if he's in the Cameron Curl role, Jeremy Chin is a top 10 DB in fantasy, if not top 5. They need to put him in the Cameron Curl role. If he's there, money. There's no doubt in my mind that Jeremy Chin goes back to what Jeremy Chin was rookie year in Carolina before they started putting him deep back. That was stupid. Jeremy Chin is better in the box. Bust.
I say, hey, I didn't even realize that he was on your list, so you get some time to talk about him right now.
Lick a nut, Nick Bosa. Come on, dude. You get paid and say, oh, you know what? I'm just not going to show up. Sir, I lost multiple games because of you. Because you just decided, no.
I had to cut him. Like I said, I was 4 games in. I think I was 1-3 in my league. IDP can score a lot of points, but we only go with 1. I couldn't keep taking an L at that position every week, Joe.
You want to know who my backup was? Thank God, Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, that'll work, right?
So screw you, Nick Bosa. I think you're cheeks and you're not very good. And you'll probably get some fake injury and say, oh, I'm hurt. I can't do it anymore. Because that seems to be what the Bosa family does. CJ Mosley, he's fantastic. I love
Really
CJ Mosley.
He's also aging.
That's the big reason. I think he's aging, and I think he's had an injury history, and I think that could start catching up to him this year. And let's just play the game that Aaron Rodgers is on the field more, and he plays the whole season.
Yeah.
CJ Mosley's not seeing nearly as many snaps as he did last year.
Yeah, with Zach Wilson at quarterback.
Exactly. And then I wanted to put this guy as a sleeper. I did because I'm like, he's back in Philly. It makes sense. But he doesn't have Jonathan Gannon as his defensive coordinator. That's C.J. Gardner-Johnson. There's been one guy in the NFL that has known what to do with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. That was to put him at safety. Because what can't he do, Ryan?
Can't cover anybody.
He can't cover anybody. It's widely known that man can't cover anybody. So he put him at safety. Career year. Had his best year he's ever had. Goes to Detroit, gets hurt. See ya. Goodbye.
Yeah.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson back in Philly. If they put him back in his same spot, I think he's okay. But Jonathan Gannon has been the only one that can unlock that man. And I don't like C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
We had one of our viewers chime in with his sleeper this year, Tui Pualato, if I remember
you
correctly.
Butchered that. Tui Tuipulotu.
Pelotu. Okay, yeah.
Tuli Tuipulotu. Yeah, I like him a lot. When Leo had brought up the rookie Junior Colson,
yeah,
they don't really compete. Colson's, I believe, in the middle, and Tuli's on the outside.
Yeah, this guy even listed him as an N. Michael did. So,
but
is this Sicoli? I don't know who this Michael is.
I don't know, but he slides in sometimes, and he's very active. So I think Tuipulotu could eat into Colson a little bit, and the Chargers, and again, this was the previous regime.
Yeah.
The previous regime of the Chargers loved him. He's definitely a Jim Harbaugh guy. He's 100% a Jim Harbaugh type guy. So I love Tuipulotu. I agree with that. I don't know if I'm spending too much on him. I think as a bench guy, potentially, sure. But I'm going to be honest with you, unless you have a Chargers, like diehard Chargers fan, which there's like 7 on planet Earth.
Going to be free.
He's going to be free. So don't spend draft capital on him, but he's going to be free.
He's a rookie, right?
Still be his second year, I believe.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought he was one of the weird names. I don't want to call them weird names. One of the complicated names that got drafted this year, because I know there were
that was Leatu.
Oh, that's exactly who it was. Yep, absolutely. Just getting them confused. My apologies.
Leatu.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the thing is where their names, their first name and their last name sound similar, but have a lot of the same letters, and it just throws me all the way off. But yep, That's exactly who I was thinking of. Great job there, Joe. All right. So yeah, keep an eye on the defensive end edge rusher for the Chargers there. Joe, we get through another IDP show. Thank you, my friend. You absolutely crushed it. Joe, are you back for NPI next week? I know you're about to start missing episodes, or no, you're good, right?
Well, no. I don't have anything in summer, but I am missing next week because I'm back at Full Sail for Hall of Fame week as a featured alumni speaking on campus. So
I love it. Congratulations, Joe. Yeah. That's awesome.
We're going to the Hall of Fame.
Sounds like it's going to be just me and Josh next week talking about Joe's Patriots, so he misses the Patriots.
No. I'm telling Josh to change that. I am talking about the Patriots. No.
Ooh, so
I'm not missing another Patriots episode. It's going to be whoever. It's going to be the Cardinals.
Okay, so it's going to be Panthers, Commanders, and Cardinals.
Thank you.
Patriots are going to be on Joe's episode the following week. That is the start of our Look Inside series where we take a look at these teams. We give you our sleepers. We give you our bust. Joe gives you an IDP player. We're going to break down each one of these teams, 3 teams a week for the rest of the summer. There's going to be some great guests. Make sure you guys tune in. That's going to be 7 p.m. next week unless we finally switch our start time, but expect it to be about 7 p.m. And Club Fantasy goes live 5 days a week. We have Mock It Like It's Hot on Saturday. Dynasty After Party on Sunday. HoovTube is going to be on the Dynasty After Party. Mocking with the Stars is Monday night with Jagger May from Football Guys. We have the Masterclass for Best Ball with Stacey Perez on Tuesday nights. And Who's Your Caddy, our golf show with Kelly Singh every Wednesday morning. Basically, there is no reason for you not to subscribe to Club Fantasy right now. We are so close to 1,000. I would love if you could help get us there. Guys, that's it. Hit the subscribe button. It's completely free. For Joe, Oh, Joe has one more thing.
One quick thing, because one of our subscribers, my coworker Emma, just got engaged like 2 hours ago. So I told her I'd give her a shout out. So she's subscribed, so you should subscribe. Not just for me, but for her
congratulations, Emma, who through the Taylor Swift drama of the season became my best friend.
Yes.
That I've never met one time. So me and Emma like this. Congratulations, Emma. I'm so very happy for you. That's awesome, Joe. I'm glad you brought that up. Guys, for Club Fantasy, you can follow Club Fantasy at Club Fantasy FFL on all of the socials. The website is clubfantasyffl.com. Joe is at Joe_Zollo. I am at the Fantasy 5. Always remember, defense wins championships, and an IDP, it wins fantasy football as well. We will see you guys next week. Have a wonderful